The clink of silverware against fine china seemed impossibly loud in the sudden hush. All eyes were on our table, on me. My husband, Mark, sat opposite, his face a mask of confused irritation, while she, Chloe, his mistress, preened beside him, my grandmother's sapphire necklace blazing at her throat. He thought this was his triumph, his final, cruel joke on me, his clueless wife, celebrating our 10th anniversary by flaunting his affair. He thought the jewels were silent witnesses. He had no idea they were about to scream his betrayal to the entire room. Just moments before, he'd raised a toast, his voice dripping with false sentiment, and gestured to the necklace on her. My necklace. My blood ran ice cold, but my hand was steady as I reached into my bag. This wasn't just an anniversary dinner anymore.
It was Judgment Day.
My name is Sarah. Before the ground crumbled beneath my feet, my life felt like a carefully tended garden, predictable, beautiful in its own way, and deeply rooted. I was a graphic designer, finding quiet satisfaction in creativity, married to Mark for what I truly, wholeheartedly believed were 10 good years. He was ambitious, charismatic, an investment analyst climbing the corporate ladder. We had the suburban dream starter pack, a charming house with a porch swing where we'd sit on summer evenings, flower boxes I meticulously cared for, discussions about future children whispered under the stars, plans for Italian vacations always just around the corner. It felt solid.
Real.
We weren't just husband and wife. We were partners, building something together brick by brick. I remember one specific evening, maybe year 7 or 8, we were painting the living room. We were covered in pale blue paint, laughing hysterically because Mark had managed to get more on himself than the walls. We ordered pizza, sat on drop cloths on the floor, and he looked at me with such uncomplicated affection, telling me this, right here, was everything he'd ever wanted. I believed him. How could I not? That memory, once warm, now feels like a shard of glass in my heart. Central to my sense of self, my connection to my past, was my grandmother's necklace. She was my anchor, a woman of quiet strength and surprising practicality. When she passed, she left me her sapphire pendant, encircled by tiny, fiery diamonds set in antique white gold. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a legacy. It carried the scent of her lavender sachets, the weight of generations, stories of my great-grandmother, wearing it to galas I could only imagine. I kept it tucked away in its worn velvet box, reserved for moments that felt truly significant. It was more than an object. It was a piece of my soul, a link to the women who made me who I was. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm, the kind you don't notice until it's disrupted. Mark and I had our routines, coffee together in the morning, shared chores, weekend errands. The silence between us was companionable, born of familiarity, or so I'd convince myself. Perhaps that comfort had become a dangerous fog, blinding me to the subtle shifts, the hairline cracks forming just beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life. The first tremor, the first sign that the ground wasn't as solid as I thought, came disguised as professional admiration.
Chloe.
Mark started mentioning her name with increasing frequency. Chloe closed that massive Henderson deal, he'd say, genuine admiration in his voice. She's a real shark, incredibly driven. Initially, I felt a flicker of pride for him, for his team's success. Then came the late nights. At first, once or twice a week. Then 3 times. Then almost every night. Major project deadline, he'd text, or team dinner, celebrating the win. The excuses always sounded plausible, professional. But his phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter, now stayed firmly in his pocket or face down beside him. He developed an almost reflexive habit of angling the screen away when he typed. When I gently asked about the new passcode, he brushed it off. Oh, work security protocol, honey. Updated everyone's. His smile felt thin, manufactured. One evening, Folding laundry still warm from the dryer, I picked up one of his button-down shirts. A scent hit me, sharp and unfamiliar. Expensive, overtly floral. Maybe gardenia? It clung stubbornly to the collar. It definitely wasn't my signature vanilla and sandalwood blend. My stomach tightened. "Mark," I asked later, trying to sound casual, "your shirt smelled strongly of perfume today. Anything I should know?" He laughed, a sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Seriously, Sarah? Must have been someone in the elevator crush at work. You know how packed it gets. Probably Janice from accounting. She bathes in that stuff." He changed the subject quickly, asking about my day with unusual intensity. A few days later, cleaning out his coat pockets before sending it to the dry cleaners, my fingers brushed against crumpled paper. A receipt. Dinner for two, $85 at Aperitivo, that chic Italian place downtown I'd been wanting to try for months. He'd claimed it was perpetually booked solid whenever I suggested it. The date stamped on the receipt? Last Tuesday. The night he'd supposedly been chained to his desk until midnight finishing the quarterly reports. My breath caught. It could be innocent, I rationalized desperately. A client dinner, he forgot to mention? But the specific restaurant, the lie about it being impossible to get into, doubt began to fester, a cold knot forming in my gut. Then came the day I wanted to wear my grandmother's necklace to a friend's wedding. I went to my dresser, to the familiar spot in the top drawer where the velvet box lived. It was there, nestled amongst my scarves. But when I lifted the lid, my heart plummeted. Empty. Just the indented, sapphire-shaped space in the faded velvet lining. Panic flared, hot and sharp. I tore through the drawer, then the whole bedroom, checking jewelry boxes, keepsake containers, even under the bed. "Mark," I called out, my voice trembling slightly. "Have you seen my grandmother's necklace? The sapphire one? It's not in its box." He walked in slowly, scrolling through something on his phone. He glanced vaguely around the messy room, my frantic search evident. "Relax, Sarah," he said, his tone maddeningly nonchalant. "It'll show up. You're always putting valuable things in safe places and forgetting where." He smirked slightly. "Maybe check the sugar bowl again?" Referring to a time years ago I'd hidden emergency cash there. His dismissiveness felt like a slap. This wasn't misplaced cash. It was irreplaceable. The empty box felt ominous, a void reflecting a growing fear I couldn't yet name. Unease began to shadow my days. The small cracks widened into undeniable fissures. Mark's affection, once a constant warmth in my life, cooled noticeably. The easy intimacy vanished, replaced by a strained politeness that felt worse than outright anger. He started criticizing me, subtly at first, then more overtly. "That dress makes you look a bit washed out, don't you think?" he'd comment as I was getting ready to go out. "Are you sure you want to serve pasta again?" he'd sigh at dinner, pushing his plate away after only a few bites. These little barbs, delivered with a veneer of helpful concern, were like slow-acting poison, eroding my confidence bit by bit. He became incredibly adept at turning my concerns back on me. If I dared to question the increasingly frequent late nights or the constant, guarded texting, he'd deploy his wounded look. "Sarah, honestly, I'm busting my gut out there trying to build a future for us," he'd say, his voice laced with weary exasperation. "I thought you supported my career. Why are you suddenly so insecure? It's disappointing." He'd make me feel small, irrational, guilty for doubting him, for needing reassurance. The gaslighting was insidious, making me question my own perceptions. Was I being paranoid? Was the stress getting to me? My anxiety simmered constantly beneath the surface. Then came a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I'd left work early, feeling unwell, a headache pounding behind my eyes. Driving home, a detour took me past a street near Mark's office building, one lined with trendy cafes. Acting on an impulse I couldn't explain, a gut feeling screaming at me, I slowed down as I passed the daily grind. And there they were, Framed in the large window, seated at a cozy corner table, were Mark and Chloe. They weren't discussing spreadsheets. He was leaning in close, laughing at something she'd said, his eyes crinkling in that way he used to look at me. Her hand rested lightly, possessively, on his forearm. The intimacy between them was palpable, a physical shock that made my headache instantly worse. I drove away, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The image burned into my mind. That evening, I confronted him, my voice barely a whisper at first. "Mark, I saw you at the daily grind today, with Chloe." He didn't even flinch. He looked up from his tablet, his expression carefully neutral.
Yeah? So?
We grabbed a quick coffee to go over the presentation for the Miller account. She spotted a flaw in the projections. Saved my skin, actually. He delivered the lies so smoothly, so convincingly. "You seem really stressed, Sarah. Maybe you should take some time off." He managed to sound concerned, making my accusation seem like a product of fatigue and paranoia. For a fleeting, confusing moment, I almost believed him. Almost. But the memory of their shared laughter, her hand on his arm, was too vivid. My search for the necklace intensified, bordering on obsessive. I retraced my steps from the last time I wore it, checked coat pockets, old purses, the safe deposit box at the bank, twice. Nothing. It had simply vanished. The empty space in the velvet box became a constant, nagging reminder that something was fundamentally wrong. I felt increasingly isolated, navigating a fog of suspicion and Mark's carefully constructed denials. Was I losing my mind, or was my husband systematically dismantling our life right before my eyes? The uncertainty was agonizing. The fragile dam of my denial finally broke, washed away by irrefutable proof, discovered in the most mundane way. Mark had been working from home more often, another perk, he claimed, of his recent successes. One Thursday afternoon, he rushed out for a last-minute client meeting, leaving his laptop open on the kitchen island. He never did that anymore. My heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. A war raged within me, the desire to respect his privacy versus the desperate need to know the truth. The need won. With trembling fingers, I tapped the trackpad. His email inbox was open. My eyes scanned the subject lines, searching for, I didn't even know what. Then I saw it. A confirmation email from the Serafina Hotel, a ridiculously expensive boutique hotel downtown. Booked for a Friday and Saturday night 3 weekends ago. The weekend Mark had supposedly been on a mandatory, phone signal-blocking corporate retreat in the mountains. My blood turned to ice water. Clicking on the email, my breath hitched. Attached were photos. Not corporate headshots. Selfies. Mark and Chloe, beaming, wrapped in plush white hotel robes, champagne flutes raised in a toast. Another showed them dressed for dinner. Chloe in a slinky black dress clinging to her curves, her arm possessively looped through Mark's, her head tilted towards him with smug adoration. They looked happy. Established. Like a real couple. It felt like watching a movie of someone else's life, except the cheating husband was mine. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook so violently, I could barely control the mouse as I scrolled further down his inbox. There were emails between them. Dozens. Hundreds, maybe. Filled with sickeningly sweet pet names, inside jokes clearly at my expense. They referred to me as the warden or sometimes just clueless. They discussed logistics for their trysts, critiqued my cooking, my friends, my life. They were planning a future, casually discussing when Mark would finally rip the Band-Aid off and leave me. And then, the email that shattered the last vestiges of my composure. Sent from Mark to Chloe just 5 days after I realized my necklace was missing. The subject line, something special for my star. The email read, "Found the perfect anniversary present for you, my love. Something truly exquisite, timeless just like you. You deserve the world, and this is just a start. Keep it safe until the big night." Anniversary? Their anniversary? The timing, the description, it slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. He hadn't just cheated. He had stolen my grandmother's necklace, my family's history, my most cherished possession, to give to her. The calculated cruelty, the sheer, breathtaking arrogance of it, left me reeling. That evening, when Mark returned, whistling cheerfully, carrying takeout from my favorite Thai place as a pathetic peace offering, I didn't wait. I didn't ease into it. I had printed everything, the hotel confirmation, the selfies, the damning emails. I spread them deliberately across the polished surface of our dining room table. "Explain this," I said, my voice dangerously quiet, devoid of tears or pleading. "Just cold, hard demand." He stopped dead in the doorway, the bag of food dangling from his hand. His face went from cheerful to shocked, then quickly morphed into a mask of pale fury. The denials came first, loud, blustering. "Where did you get this?"
You went through my laptop?
"How dare you invade my privacy?" Then the blame shifting. "This is your fault, Sarah. You've been so suspicious, so distant. You pushed me away." He started pacing, shouting, throwing his hands up, knocking a vase off a side table. It shattered, mirroring the state of our marriage. There was no remorse in his eyes, no apology on his lips. Just pure, unadulterated rage at being caught, cornered like the rat he was. The man I thought I knew, the man I had loved and built a life with, evaporated in that moment. He was a stranger, spitting venom, revealing the ugly truth of his character. The love I'd clung to, the hope I'd foolishly nurtured, withered and died right there on the dining room floor amidst the scattered emails and broken pottery. All that remained was a vast, hollow emptiness and a burgeoning, ice-cold resolve. He had tried to break me, humiliate me, erase my history.
He wouldn't win.
The game wasn't over. It had just begun. I needed more than an apology. I needed justice. And I needed my necklace back. The days that followed were lived in a strange, suspended reality. On the outside, I was numbly going through the motions. I listened to Mark's tearful, manipulative apologies, the predictable script of "it was a mistake. She meant nothing." I was under so much pressure. I let him believe I was considering reconciliation, that his pathetic performance was working. Inside, however, I was a glacier moving with slow, inexorable purpose. While he was at work, undoubtedly spending time smoothing things over with Chloe, I moved methodically. I gathered every financial statement, tax return, and shared asset document I could find. I consulted discreetly with a highly recommended, notoriously sharp divorce attorney my friend recommended, outlining the situation in stark detail. I opened a new bank account in my name only. Small steps, unseen, unheard, severing the ties that bound my life to his. But the necklace, its absence, was a constant ache, a symbol of his ultimate betrayal. How could I retrieve something so precious, so personal, from the clutches of the woman who had helped steal my husband? And how could I ensure Mark faced consequences so profound, so public, that he could never simply charm his way out of it? The answer came unexpectedly, during a melancholic afternoon spent sorting through boxes in the attic, purging remnants of our shared life. Tucked deep inside my grandmother's old leather keepsake trunk, beneath faded letters and sepia photographs, was a small, plain manila envelope. On the front, in her familiar, elegant script, it read, "For Sarah, emergency only." My breath hitched. I'd completely forgotten about this. My hands trembled slightly as I carefully slid it open. Inside wasn't money or jewelry, but a single, folded sheet of heavy paper containing complex login instructions for a secure website I'd never seen before, alongside a tiny, almost invisible metallic key, no bigger than a grain of rice, a remote activation key. And then a memory surfaced, hazy at first, then sharpening into focus. Years ago, after a close friend of hers had been devastatingly burgled, losing irreplaceable heirlooms. My grandmother, always practical beneath her gentle exterior, had become briefly, intensely focused on protecting her necklace. She'd mentioned taking it to a specialist jeweler in the city, someone known for cutting-edge, discreet security solutions for high-value items. She'd had something modern installed, she'd hinted vaguely, winking. "Think of it as the gems having ears and legs, darling," she'd chuckled. "Just in case." At the time, I dismissed it as one of her charming eccentricities.
Now?
It felt like a lifeline thrown from the past, a final, protective gesture from the woman I missed so dearly. My heart hammered with a sudden surge of adrenaline and hope. Racing downstairs to my own laptop, my fingers flew, typing in the secure web address. The login screen appeared, stark and professional. I entered the username and password from the sheet, holding my breath. Access granted. A simple interface appeared. One option was locate asset. Another was activate audio feed. With trembling hands, I inserted the tiny key into a barely noticeable slot on the side of my laptop, a custom modification the jeweler must have provided her. Then I clicked locate asset. A map materialized, zooming in on a blinking blue. Location: a luxury apartment building downtown, an address I vaguely recognized from one of Mark's misdirected pieces of mail months ago.
Chloe's nest.
My jaw tightened. Then the audio feed. Taking a deep, steadying breath, I plugged in my best noise-canceling earbuds and clicked activate. A brief hiss of static, then voices. Crystal clear. "Absolutely stunning on you." Mark's voice cooed, that familiar, intimate tone now making my stomach churn. "Way better than it ever looked on, well, you know. On her." Chloe giggled, a high-pitched, triumphant sound that grated like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh, Mark, it's divine. Truly. The most beautiful thing anyone's ever given me. Our real anniversary present." My fists clenched. Their anniversary. He'd timed the theft perfectly. "Just wait until Friday," Mark continued, his voice thick with smug anticipation. "Our 10-year anniversary dinner at Le Mirage. I've booked the best table. And guess who's coming as my colleague celebrating a promotion?" He chuckled darkly.
You.
"Wearing that. Her face will be absolutely priceless when she sees it. She'll just have to sit there, choking on her overpriced sea base, watching you shine."
Poor Sarah.
Still so completely clueless. Chloe's peal of laughter echoed in my ears, dripping with condescending pity. Clueless? Oh, I wasn't clueless anymore. Fury, cold and diamond-hard, settled in my chest. My grandmother, my practical, far-sighted grandmother, hadn't just given me a tracker. She'd given me a microphone. She'd given me the weapon and the stage. They wanted a show. They were about to get one they'd never forget. Friday night suddenly felt like an eternity away, but I knew exactly what I needed to do. Friday night arrived, heavy with unspoken tension beneath a veneer of forced civility. I took my time getting ready, selecting a dress not for Mark, but for myself, a sheath of deep crimson silk that felt like armor. I styled my hair meticulously, applied makeup like war paint. When I descended the stairs, Mark was waiting, already dressed in an expensive suit. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly, a flicker of something: surprise? Guilt? Annoyance that I wasn't playing the part of the moping wife? Crossing his face before being quickly masked. "Wow, Sarah," he murmured, attempting a charming smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You look stunning."
He reached for my hand.
I allowed him to take it, my skin cool against his, my expression carefully neutral. He seemed to visibly relax, misinterpreting my icy calm as acceptance, or perhaps defeated resignation.
Fool.
We drove in strained silence to Le Mirage, the kind of oppressively opulent restaurant where whispers echoed and waiters glided like ghosts. Mark, it seemed, had spared no expense for this little drama he'd orchestrated. He'd requested and received a prominent table, practically center stage in the main dining room. And standing near the maitre d' stand, bathed in the warm glow of the chandeliers, was Chloe. She was poured into a shimmering silver dress, cut low, designed to draw every eye. And there, against her skin, blazing with reflected light, was my grandmother's sapphire necklace. Seeing it on her sent a fresh wave of nausea through me, but I locked my gaze, smoothed my features into a polite mask. Mark led me over, his hand possessively on the small of my back. "Sarah, darling, you remember my star colleague, Chloe?" he said, his voice overly jovial. Chloe just landed a massive promotion, so I insisted she join us to celebrate our anniversary, her success. Lots to be thankful for tonight. "How wonderful," I replied, my voice smooth, betraying none of the turbulent rage beneath. "Congratulations on your achievements, Chloe." Her smile was pure saccharine, her eyes darting towards Mark with a look of smug ownership before flicking back to me with feigned friendliness.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mark has been such a supportive mentor. The dinner itself was a masterclass in passive-aggressive torture. Mark and Chloe kept up a running commentary disguised as work talk, filled with inside jokes and veiled references I was clearly meant not to understand. They exchanged lingering glances over the rims of their wine glasses. I saw their feet brush under the table more than once. I played the part of the oblivious wife, asking bland questions about their projects, commenting on the food, sipping my water, a coiled spring of anticipation tightening within me. Finally, after the main courses were cleared, Mark leaned back, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. He cleared his throat loudly, capturing the attention of the surrounding tables, just as I knew he would. "Actually," he announced, his voice resonating in the hushed room, "while we're celebrating Chloe's incredible success." He paused for dramatic effect, then beamed directly at her. "Chloe, I have to say again, that necklace, it looks absolutely magnificent on you. Truly, a gift worthy of someone so special." Chloe blushed, playing the part, reaching up to touch the sapphire pendant as if she'd owned it forever. "Oh, Mark," she sighed, her voice carrying clearly. "It's simply the most meaningful, beautiful gift I have ever received. It means more than words can say." This was it.
The cue.
My heart hammered, but my hands were steady. I leaned forward, pitching my voice to Carrie but keeping it calm, conversational. "It is stunning, isn't it?" I addressed Chloe directly, a polite inquiry in my tone. "Such a unique design. Antique, wouldn't you say?" "Mark," I turned to him, my eyes locking with his. "Wherever did you manage to find such a specific, one-of-a-kind piece?" Mark blinked, momentarily thrown off script. Chloe just continued to beam, basking in the reflected glory. "He has the most impeccable taste," she purred, loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear clearly. I allowed a small, knowing smile to touch my lips. "He does have specific tastes." Then, reaching deliberately into my crimson evening bag, I retrieved my smartphone and a small, sleek, powerful Bluetooth speaker. I placed the speaker firmly in the center of the table, the silence amplifying the soft click as it powered on. "You know," I continued, my voice gaining strength and clarity, "this particular necklace has quite a history. A story, you might say. And funnily enough, tonight it feels like telling it." My finger hovered over the screen. I looked from Mark's suddenly wary face to Chloe's expectant one. Then I tapped play on the pre-queued audio file from the necklace's hidden microphone. Mark's recorded voice filled the stunned silence of the restaurant, amplified, unmistakable, intimate. "Absolutely stunning on you." His voice echoed, bouncing off the crystal glasses. "Way better than it ever looked on, well, you know, on her." A collective intake of breath rippled through the nearby tables. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Conversations died. Chloe's beaming smile froze, then began to crumble. Mark's face went slack, the color draining rapidly, leaving behind a pasty, horrified pallor. The recording continued relentlessly. Chloe's recorded giggle, sharp and triumphant. "Oh, Mark, it's divine.
Truly.
The most beautiful thing anyone's ever given me. Our real anniversary present." More gasps. A woman at the next table covered her mouth, her eyes wide. Chloe's hand flew instinctively to the necklace, her fingers fumbling, trembling. "Just wait until Friday," Mark's recorded voice sneered. "Our 10-year anniversary dinner at Le Mirage. Guess who's coming as my colleague celebrating a promotion?
You.
Wearing that. Her face will be absolutely priceless. She'll just have to sit there, choking on her overpriced sea base, watching you shine."
Poor Sarah.
Still so completely clueless. Chloe's mocking, recorded laughter filled the dead air, followed by Mark's smug chuckle. Absolute, deafening silence descended upon the dining room. Every eye was locked on our table, on the unfolding catastrophe. Chloe was visibly shaking now, tears welling, her face crimson with humiliation. Mark looked like he'd been physically struck, paralyzed in his chair, unable to speak or move, sweat beading on his forehead. Slowly, deliberately, I pushed back my chair and stood up, smoothing the crimson silk of my dress. I walked calmly around the table to stand directly in front of the trembling Chloe. I held out my hand, palm up. My voice was low, but it cut through the silence like a knife. "I believe," I said, locking eyes with her, "that belongs to me."
It was my grandmother's.
And she didn't like thieves. Chloe didn't resist. She couldn't meet my gaze. Her fingers scrambled frantically at the clasp, desperate to get it off. It finally came undone, and she practically thrust the heavy pendant into my waiting hand. Its familiar weight felt like coming home. Clutching the necklace tightly, I turned to face the wreckage. Mark was staring at me, his expression a mixture of utter disbelief, terror, and dawning comprehension. I addressed him directly, my voice ringing out, clear and steady, for the entire room to hear.
10 years, Mark.
A decade of my life. My loyalty, my trust, my love. And this is how you repay it? Stealing my family's legacy, a piece of my history, to adorn your mistress? Planning to humiliate me on the very night that should have celebrated our life together. I held the sapphire pendant aloft, letting it catch the light. You thought I was clueless. You thought I was weak. You underestimated me. And you certainly underestimated my grandmother. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Turns out, some family jewels do more than just sparkle. They listen. They remember. And tonight, I let my gaze sweep across the stunned onlookers before landing back on Mark's devastated face. Tonight, they screamed the truth. I leaned in slightly towards him, my voice dropping to a venomous whisper only he could hear. Happy anniversary. Then, turning my back on the shambles of his life, on Chloe's quiet sobs, on the shocked faces of strangers, I walked towards the exit. Clutching my grandmother's necklace, feeling its cool weight against my skin, I pushed open the heavy doors and stepped out into the night air, leaving the deafening silence and the spectacular implosion behind me. I didn't look back. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic, exactly as I'd hoped. The Le Mirage meltdown, as it quickly became known, was the talk of the town. Someone at a nearby table had apparently discreetly filmed the latter part of the confrontation on their phone, and snippets, along with horrified eyewitness accounts, spread through social media and gossip circles like wildfire within hours. The combination of adultery, theft of a family heirloom, and the sheer, audacious cruelty of Mark's plan, followed by the dramatic reveal via the spy necklace, was simply too juicy to ignore. Mark's professional life imploded. His firm, deeply embarrassed by the public scandal and the clear evidence of his duplicity, the story inevitably painted him not just as an adulterer, but as calculating and untrustworthy, swiftly invoked a morals clause in his contract. He wasn't just asked to resign, he was effectively fired in disgrace. I heard through the grapevine that finding new employment in finance, an industry heavily reliant on reputation and trust, proved virtually impossible for him. Chloe didn't fare much better. The public humiliation and the label of Mistress who wore stolen jewelry clung to her. Her big promotion evaporated, and she reportedly left the city altogether within a month, seeking anonymity elsewhere. Good riddance. The divorce was almost laughably swift. Faced with a mountain of evidence, the emails, the photos, the hotel bills, and now, the widely circulated story of the restaurant confrontation, complete with audio proof of his malicious intent, Mark's lawyer advised him not to contest anything. He signed the papers quickly, desperate to make it all go away. The settlement heavily favored me, securing my financial independence. I insisted on selling the house immediately. Walking away from the place that held so many memories, now tainted by betrayal, felt essential. I kept only items that held genuine personal value, things untouched by his deceit. My grandmother's necklace, of course, took pride of place. I moved into a bright, modern apartment overlooking the city park. It felt like a fresh start, a blank canvas. Throwing myself into my graphic design work became my therapy. I landed several major clients, my creativity flourishing now that it wasn't overshadowed by the constant anxiety and suspicion of my marriage. Healing wasn't linear. There were days filled with anger, nights haunted by sadness for the life I thought I had. But gradually, the darkness receded. I reconnected with old friends Mark had subtly discouraged me from seeing, rebuilt my confidence, and slowly rediscovered the joy in simple things: brunch with girlfriends, solo trips to art galleries, the quiet satisfaction of building a life entirely on my own terms. The sapphire necklace rests again in its velvet box, but its meaning has deepened. It's no longer just a link to my past, but a symbol of resilience. A reminder that strength can be found in unexpected places, that truth has a way of surfacing, and that my grandmother's love and foresight reached across time to protect me. The satisfaction wasn't just in the revenge, though watching their world crumble was undeniably cathartic. The true victory was in reclaiming my story, my dignity, and my power. Mark tried to steal my past and ruin my future, but he failed. I learned that betrayal doesn't have to break you. It can reveal a strength you never knew you possessed. And sometimes, justice doesn't just whisper. It finds a way to scream.